Warning, this podcast contains spoilers for The Last of Us Episode 7, and in our Nerd Out, pretty major spoilers, I think, for The Last of Us Parts 1 and 2, the video game. And depending on what The Last of Us Season 2 decides to do, potentially for The Last of Us Season 2 as well. So be warned about that Nerd Out. Hello, my name is Jason Concepcion.
And I'm Rosie Knight.
And welcome to X-Ray Vision, the Crooked Media podcast, where we dive deep into your favorite shows, movies, comics, and pop culture.
In this episode, guess what? It's The Last of Us, and it's going to make you cry, like every week. In the Airlock,
every week.
It's episode 7, and boy, if you haven't played the game, and if you have played the game, but if you haven't played the game, you're in for some sad times ahead. And in a very relative nerd out, listener Rob tells us about a possible Last of Us Part 3 video game. Dun, dun, dun.
Of course, if you want to jump around, check the show notes for timestamps coming up. The airlock. We're stepping out of the airlock and into Ellie's FEDRA orphanage past for The Last of Us Episode 7, titled Left Behind, written by Neil Druckmann and directed by Liza Johnson. We start somewhere in suburban Colorado. There is a bloody trail leading to the ruin of a suburban house. Inside, Ellie is desperately trying to keep Joel alive. She has him laid out on a mattress in the garage or somewhere. She's trying to keep pressure on his gut wound, which same place Sarah was at. You know, there again, these like mirror images.
Foreshadowing. And I think this is like a great moment to just kind of say the show is doing so many smart little things to make itself more believable. Because compared to the game where Joel's like impaled, you know, this feels very real. It feels like a real small wound that could end a life. And it does have that impact of feeling like, is that where Sarah was hit? It looks the same, and Joel is not doing well.
I mean, do we have Neosporin in the post-outbreak future? It's unclear if there's any left.
I hope so.
Joel is gasping, just leave, trying to get Ellie to just save herself, get out of there. And Ellie is saying, Joel, shut the fuck up. As she
She's not having any of it.
No, she is desperately trying to save his life. Joel, of course, wants Ellie to take the horse, ride back to Jackson, live out her life with Tommy and Marie. And Ellie covers Joel with his jacket because he's shivering so hard. And she heads upstairs, closes the door on the room where Joel is, and starts thinking about the past, and we flash back there. It is her FEDRA school. We get to see Ellie at FEDRA school, jogging in phys ed class, jogging around in a circle. She's wearing a Walkman from like 1988 and kind of loping around in a circle. And as she's doing that, a tall girl, who we will soon come to learn is named Bethany, snatches her headphones off her head and is like, hey, pick it up. Apparently, collective punishment is the rule at FEDRA, which is not surprising. And because Ellie is slow, everybody's going to have to run extra laps. And Bethany is tired of running extra laps. So Ellie's like, okay, then I'll fight you to get my Walkman back. Bethany says, you don't fight, your friend fights. And she's not here anymore, is she? And then Ellie punches the girl in the face.
It's great. It's really just a good moment. And I think as well, I feel like this is such a important moment in Ellie's story, because what we see here is this transition from the girl who lags behind, the girl who's kind of in her own world, the girl who clearly was just protected by her friend. And in this moment, we get that little bit of fierceness and agency, and that Ellie that we kind of know now, which is the Ellie who's not afraid to just punch someone in the face.
That's a great point, because as we see over the course of this episode, and as we've seen over the course of this series, Ellie is often the person under the protection of the fighter, the more aggressive person, the stronger person, the more confident person, as she's been with Joel. And that has been the case with her friend, who we have yet to meet, clearly. We catch up with Ellie in Captain Kwong's office. Captain Kwong's kind of the principal of this FEDRA school. And in this meeting, we learn that Ellie's been disruptive lately. It's been just the last few weeks that this kicked off. She's obviously very smart, brilliant even. Captain Kwong notes that. But she's been in the hole several times over the last few weeks. When she offers to just go to the hole again for knocking Bethany out, Kwong doesn't take the bait. He's frustrated because, again, she is smarter than she's been acting. So he lays out a couple of paths for her. He says, okay, path number 1, you keep fucking up and Bethany's going to be your commanding officer. How do you like that? Or 2, follow the rules, become an officer. You get the better food, you get the better housing, you get the less dangerous work, and you get to give other people orders. What do you think about that? And the truth is, though she doesn't say anything here, Ellie thinks that sounds pretty good, actually.
He sells her on it in that moment. There's like an honesty here, an adult who is just telling her how it is, and who is basically like, look, you can either let your bullies bully you, or you can rise up the ranks of this fascist organization, but then you can bully the bully. And you can also be in like a safer space.
It's interesting. This scene starts with Ellie looking at Kwong's family photos. It's a wife and daughter, I'm assuming, right? And who knows if they're still alive or what. But thinking about this is our first real moment of like seeing FEDRA humanized, because Kwong says right after that kind of lecture on the 2 paths, he says, quote, "We're the only thing holding this all together. If we go down, the people in the zone will starve and murder each other." Now, and it's interesting because we've been framing the things that Joel or Tommy have done in the past as you did what you had to do to survive. And I think Kwong would say, not only am I doing what I have to do to survive, as distasteful and at times unfair as it is, but I'm also doing what I have to do so other people can survive. He believes that.
He's a believer. He's a believer in FEDRA. And he kind of hints at this, like, you know, no matter what other people say about FEDRA, like, it's only us. And you know what? In the Boston QZ, maybe that was what was real. Maybe that was a version of that was true, at least at some point, or that's what Kwong believes. But, like, I do think it's a really interesting comparison after we saw what FEDRA did in, Kansas City.
Yeah, I think that argument holds some weight, and it's also clear that there is no overarching command and control of FEDRA. Like, each FEDRA has become... Yeah,
they dropped them in and were like, good luck.
They've become their own little city-states unto themselves without any kind of, like, oversight. But I think it's an important perspective to hear that despite the corruption of the rank-and-file soldiers...
There are people who believe
There are people at the top who are like, this is... I'm not saying this is perfect, but this is the best we got. And maybe I'm not sure that he's necessarily wrong. Kwong then goes on to tell Ellie, basically, like, I see you as a future leader. Now get your Walkman and get the fuck out of here. and she leaves. Later, Ellie is in her room. She's reading an issue of Savage Starlight. It is raining, much like the night where she and Joel set out on their big adventure from the QZ. You see her knife on the table next to her. She stares across the room at an empty bed. She's frustrated. She's lonely. She's clearly not getting any kind of satisfaction from reading this issue of Savage Starlight, and eventually she falls asleep. And when she's asleep late at night, almost 2 a.m, someone creeps into the room through the window, and it is Riley. This is the person who is missing. This is the protector. This is Ellie's best friend, owner of the empty bed, and Riley has been missing for the last 3 weeks.
And I will say, this is a great bit of foreshadowing about how not sensible Riley is, yeah? Because Riley creeps into this room and basically sneaks up on her armed friend, who obviously is like, what the fuck? And almost stabs her. Like, and I think that is a really good kind of like, Riley is someone who has not been made more cautious by the post-apocalypse. Riley is someone who has found that humor and pranks and kind of this laissez-faire, like reckless attitude is what helps her get by. And she even says it to Ellie. She's like, it was a joke. I thought you'd find it funny.
Yeah, it's interesting. Riley is, whereas Ellie is, by dint of how she was raised, is kind of a believer in what FEDRA is selling. Riley is looking for a cause, and she has clearly found it. Ellie is like, "Are you okay?" And Riley's like, "I just ran away for a little bit." And then she flashes a gun, a piece.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah,
Dun,
Ellie,
dun, dun.
and Ellie loves a gun.
Ellie loves a gun.
So she knows what she wants. She knows
nobody loves a gun more than Ellie. And Ellie is fucking shocked because, Riley has joined the Fireflies. This is what this means. Now, I would say for anyone who has been thinking of the Fireflies as like this freedom fighter organization fighting against the evils of FEDRA, they just armed like a 16-year-old kid.
Literally. And it as we learn
and
more,
put her in charge of bombs. Spoiler, we're going to moving ahead.
Yeah. There's a lot of, you learn a lot about Marlene, I feel like. And I wrote a piece actually at IGN where I think this leans into some of our thoughts about like, what does Marlene know and how much is she kind of this kind of puppet master? But they literally just armed a child who is clearly lovely, but reckless AF.
Well,
so
I mean, she's a kid. She is a kid. There's almost no situation in which you can be like, we're an armed quasi-military operation fighting to overthrow, a despotic regime, and we're trying to bring democracy and freedom, back to the United States, and how we're going to do that is by giving 16-year-olds guns. Like it's bad. It doesn't work. So. Riley says, she went and joined the Fireflies. She wants Ellie to come out with her for a few hours, doesn't say what they're going to do, and have basically the best night of their lives. Ellie is like, well, I got to be at drill tomorrow. But she goes, of course, anyway. They head out to the streets of the QZ. Riley wants Ellie to stop fucking around with Bethany. It's interesting to your point. Riley has come away from this 3 weeks with the Fireflies, and now she's acting like, listen, kid, I've seen the world. And as a mature adult now, and owner of a firearm, I got to tell you, this little firearm. This little drama you have with Riley, it's small potatoes compared to what's really going out there in the big adult world. It's a little patronizing, just a little bit patronizing. Riley, we learn, is a fighter. She talks about how she's learned to kind of like focus her rage, her anger on the things that matter, meaning overthrowing tyranny and reestablishing democracy under the aegis of the Fireflies. And she gives Ellie a little bit of you can't fight everything. Again, this wisdom that she has gleaned in the 3 weeks
you gotta pick
at
something.
Firefly training camp. Listen, I've been firing at paper targets for the last 2 weeks, and I got to tell you, you can't fight everybody.
I mean, it's also
listen to me.
I think this is a really interesting episode in terms of how it showcases the similarities, because FEDRA is making child soldiers. That's what they're training people for. And they arguably probably arm some of those children. And guess what? The Fireflies are doing exactly the same thing. It's kind of the Kansas City question of what do you replace something like FEDRA with? It has to be something better. It can't be the same thing. And are the Fireflies in a process of actually planning for something better, or are they just replicating the thing that they want to stop?
Exactly what I was thinking so much about watching this episode. This is maybe this conversation topic is maybe jumping ahead a little bit, but I think the downfall of the Fireflies, of FEDRA, of the Kansas City freedom fighters, if you could call them that, and people who fight for causes in the real world is this thought of, okay, we're opposing the bad guys, therefore we are good, and when we get power, we will be good. When in actual fact, you will just become the thing that you overthrew because no one has the clear-eyed ability to look at themselves and go, no, actually, the problem is not the people who are in charge. The problem is the corrosive effect of being in charge.
Yeah, and the systems.
The systems that we build. If we don't build a system that has oversight on the people who are in power, then we're just going to be FEDRA Part 2. And this is not a thing that either the Fireflies or Riley or anybody is thinking about that we've seen in this world.
No, I think the only people who are thinking about it, ironically, is like Jackson, right?
Jackson,
the communists.
Yeah. Like, the communists.
They took years to plan a system with, from what we know, like democratic oversight and like extreme planning. But what has that meant? That means it's a tiny society that's actually incredibly exclusionary. So there's this kind of like all these really interesting conversations. And the thing that so blew me away about this episode is like, look, in our Discord, on the internet, the thing that is going to get you about this episode is the emotional arc of the characters, right?
Absolutely.
But I came away from it knowing so much more about the world and having so many more questions about the Fireflies. The piece that I wrote, I cover this show every week at IGN, and the piece that I wrote this week wasn't even to do with Ellie and Riley. It was just all about Marlene, because I was like, wait a minute, what does this mean? Because we'll get to this later, but they changed. So far, they haven't revealed something that's really important in the game to understand Marlene. And without that knowledge, Marlene seems like a very sinister figure. And I find that to be a very interesting choice. So this is just such a mind-blowing episode, because it is essentially like a fun Stranger Things-esque, like YA adventure to a point.
It reminded me of, I mean, it's very, very modeled on the DLC in which Riley appears.
It's like direct.
But it also reminded me of the San Junipero episode of Black Mirror.
Yes, very San Junipero.
Yeah, two women together just living a life in a night.
Which I also think is like probably completely intentional, because I feel like a lot of people felt like the third episode of this show, another great queer episode of TV, a lot of people, I saw them being like, the gays, they have their San Junipero, like the cis gays, like they have it, the men have found, they found their space. And I kind of think that they probably look to that a lot, like this idea of where can you find like joy in love and in queer love, even in the face of like an apocalypse.
So Riley leads Ellie over rooftops. They head up into a building. Ellie is winded. They find a dead body there, which apparently was not there the last time Riley has been through this building. They then take a closer look.
Probably a good time to turn back.
Yeah, I would imagine so. But then it's clear that the guy committed suicide. There's a bottle of pre-outbreak liquor, I think, next to him, which is clearly very expensive, as is there's also a baggie of pills, and we know the baggie at least is extremely expensive.
Oh, yeah.
So this person went out with a bang. The hopelessness caught up to them, and they have killed themselves. And they kind of like lean in close, and they examine this person. They take the bottle of whiskey, and then all of a sudden the floor under this corpse gives way, and it just falls down. And it's a measure of how hardened you would be growing up in this world that Ellie just fucking laughs, just laughing hysterically at this.
Yeah.
On the roof, the girls sip from the bottle. Ellie asks, is that the first dead body you've ever seen? Riley is like, no, I saw my parents. Ellie's like, oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I asked about that. As a change of topic, can I hold your gun?
Could I please? This is where it began. Gun? She's like, I just love guns.
Can I just like feel the weight of it? Yeah,
that would be great.
I didn't love the trigger discipline here, but that's another thing. Ellie then asks, okay, well, why'd you join the Fireflies? Like, what was it, a boy? Like, what was it? This probing, clearly for what happens later on. Riley says that she was just out. She just snuck out. She's clearly was very frustrated with the kind of rules and regulations of FEDRA. And so she had snuck out. She's running around in the streets. She ran into a woman who she doesn't define who it is here, but it's clearly Marlene, who asked her, hey, what do you think of FEDRA? And Riley must have asked in the right way, because next thing you know, Riley is in the Fireflies. And Ellie here pushing back against this kind of clear romance that Riley is in with this kind of like new mission that she has found in her life, pushes back by basically recycling Captain Wong's line, which is like, well, FEDRA, they're not perfect, but like, aren't they the only things holding it together here? Riley doesn't argue with this now. She doesn't, not at this moment. She leads Ellie on to where they're going. She said, they're standing on the rooftop. She says, look over there. You see those new lights? Yeah. FEDRA has been apparently running new electric lines to some of the vacant apartments in order to like service and house the growing population. And now they have that argument. Ellie's like, well, see, FEDRA's not bad. They're not all bad, right? They're giving people a place to live. And Riley says, yeah, but they're starving a portion of their population. And Ellie says, well, it wouldn't be so difficult if the Fireflies hadn't blown up the warehouse where all the food is kept. And then Riley's like, no, we didn't do that. And then Ellie's like, and also the Fireflies are killing civilians when they get caught in the crossfire, or just happen to be around where these bombs blow up. And then Riley says, no, we're not doing that. And then she says the thing that is so bitterly ironic, and she doesn't know it. It's, again, with this incredible maturity that she's gleaned, like in the 3 weeks that she's been running away, is, it's okay to admit that you don't know everything. The implication being, I do kind of know, not everything, but a lot more about the world, a lot more than you. You don't understand how it works. And of course, that the tragedy of this is that they're both wrong. And she also says, okay, we're here, and it's the mall. This building is supposedly sealed up because it's full of infected. And Riley says, oh, yeah, well, if it's sealed off, then why isn't it sealed off? And they see there's a hole in the roof and they go inside. And what they find in here is that the electricity is on. Riley turns it on. And all the stuff is almost as it had been on outbreak day. Like still the signs of looting at different stores, but electricity on.
It's
music
really
playing, fountains running,
it's
escalators
such a cool
running.
Visual.
It's a really cool
It's really
visual.
amazing. And also, I saw some people who were like, oh, how could you not see those lights? No, I've actually been to those American malls where the roof is completely solid, but it looks like there's skylights and they're actually electrical lights and stuff. I believe that there is a version of the world where you could not see those lights coming on from outside. Now, do I think you should be like blasting carousel music when there is a whole race of infected monsters who can only hear things? No, this is obviously a bad idea, but I will say I do believe there's a version where people couldn't see the lights outside. I don't think the lights are what you should be worrying about.
I think the story will bear you out. Riley notes that, hey, looks like there's no infected in the mall, like they've been telling us. So score one for FEDRA being absolute liars. She tells Ellie again that some of the stores are empty because of the looting. They stand in front of a Victoria's Secret store and they're kind of just talking about like what they're experiencing. And then Riley says, I'm trying to imagine you wearing that, pointing at one of the pieces in there. Ellie blushes extremely strongly. And then Riley's like, okay, are you ready for, I've got several wonders that you're going to experience tonight. Are you ready for the first one? And she takes her to a carousel. And it's gorgeous. One of the old school carousels with the carved wooden horses, galloping in full gallop, the beautiful lights and mirrored pieces all around the outside. Riley turns it on. It starts spinning around. I love the touch that it's like right across the way from a GameStop. Like there's a GameStop right there.
Yeah. Also, I just want to say as well, I love this because Ellie is like, Riley kind of in her jaded Firefly new persona, the carousel, that's like a wonder to her. And she can even see it. But like when Ellie sees an escalator, Ellie is like, moving stairs, like, is this a wonder? And you really learn so much about like what Ellie doesn't know. There's loads of great moments like that. Like after the Victoria's Secret moment with this lingerie, Riley walks ahead and Ellie's kind of checking her hair in the mirror. And you start in the window and you start to really see that Riley and Ellie are not just friends, or at least Ellie would like them to be something more.
I think, And they both would like the other to be something more, but they're both like afraid, nervous about
I mean,
broaching it, and
that's why Riley
really
is
charming and
it's so
heartwarming.
cute. And I have to say, Storm Reed is just so incredible here. She's incredible in everything.
Yeah, she's
incredible
amazing,
in The Invisible Man. She was really great in Wrinkle in Time, which I know people think is a really weird movie, and it is, but she's brilliant in it. Like, she's just such. Oh, she's great in Euphoria. Like, she's such a great actress. And something that this show has done so well is like they bring in cast members for one episode, and you just would do anything for them to stick around. But this is a flashback. So you're already aware that that's not necessarily going to be the case. And if you remember what Ellie told Tess about getting bitten, Ellie claimed that she was in there by herself. So I think you're starting to get a vision for what this is going to be. But I love this idea that Riley is like, they're just friends, but Riley's planned like this date night in an abandoned mall, which, by the way, is the kind of thing we should see more in these post-apocalyptic storytelling. I remember playing the DLC. It's like, oh, this is what... Why don't we see this? Why is there never a moment where people take advantage of the emptiness and do something cool and fun? It's like in The Walking Dead, how is there never a moment where somebody like goes to an old movie theater or something, I love this idea of like the trying to seek out the human nature of having fun and bringing fun into someone else's life, even if, as we are sure to learn, this was a very reckless choice.
The carousel stops and the conversation about the Fireflies starts back up again. Riley and Ellie kind of argue about like whether they think the Fireflies will make a difference. And clearly Riley does. Riley says, hey, they freed other QZs. This is probably not true. Like, clearly this is, I think, Firefly propaganda. It feels like something that would be
to join the Fireflies.
I agree. Ellie says that if you stay with FEDRA, I mean, Captain Wong says, I'm a leader. I think we could be running things in a few years. And Riley says, forget that. Wong had me on sewage detail. Like, that's what I would have been doing. That's why I ran away, which made me think again of something of that Wong kind of has a point in the sense of, listen, sewer detail. Is it anything that anyone wants to do? No. Is it absolutely necessary for like the functioning of a civilized society where people live together in scale? Yes. Like maybe you could argue in the top 3 most important jobs that you could have is making sure we don't drown in our own waste. Like, that's a vital job. But because it's not framed as this adventure, this grand fight against tyranny, there's no romance in it. It's not something that you could use to groom young people to like get excited for. They want to hold guns and fight the bad guys. Yeah. They don't want to go into the sewer and clean it out so the 20,000 or 40,000, how many people live here, don't die of some disease that is preventable. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think as well, like, that is also partly FEDRA's fault, because it's clear that they use
it as
roles as
yes.
punishment.
Yeah.
So if you don't follow the rules, you're going to get the bad thing. But you're right, like that in a post-apocalyptic world, that is a heroic job, because that is something everybody needs to do every single day and needs to not die and not get, sick and be able to go to the bathroom. And I love that because it's such a good, smart point. There's something true in what he's saying.
Yeah.
But it's
not
all
necessarily
about presentation. Wrong. They're not they use these roles as punishment and slight reward if you become a commander. But the Fireflies, they promise a mission. They promise a story.
Yeah, they promise freedom and romance and adventure and fighting against, we're going to do it and you can hold a gun. It's going to be great. They move on to the next wonder, and it is a photo booth. And as a person who loves a photo booth, I'm looking around my office. I see numerous pictures from various times with various friends and other people at photo booths.
Amazing!
I fucking love a photo booth. It cost $5, which of course Riley has. She's been waiting to use it. And they mug for the camera.
Evening.
There's a wonderful moment where, they're hanging on each other as and then all of a sudden Ellie gets a little uncomfortable by the closeness. And so they sit very chastely next to each other and they look at the pics, and Ellie's like, oh, I love that one. And Riley lets Ellie have the one she likes.
And this is a great direct from the game
direct
moment where they're doing these kind of scary faces, and there's so much childlike wonder here. I just love it. And I love that as we go along, the $5 is your first hint. The fact that Riley knows about this at all, you start to realize that Riley has planned this. Riley has spent time working out how to present this for Ellie.
Next, the arcade. Gotta go to the arcade. Old school.
I get this excited.
Stand-up cabinets, coin-op arcade.
When I go to the mall and they have an arcade, which, by the way, I am blessed with because a lot of malls in LA have arcades.
Yeah.
I am as excited as they are in the post-apocalypse, just in a normal day. So I love this moment. I feel like it's very representative. It encapsulates that excitement. And obviously for Ellie, this is that game that we know that Riley told her about. The game that she never got to play.
I remember as a kid, like being taken to the mall and just hearing the sounds in the distance as you got close to like the change machine going and all the beep, 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 like, and just being like, oh, fuck, I want to go to the arcade. I want to hang out at the arcade. I want to be there. I remember I remember the first time I ever cashed in $5 for quarters and just being like, oh my God, this is like a treasure. Were rich. I'm going to be here for 12 hours playing video.
This is like the most English situation, but like malls didn't really exist that way when I was a kid, or like arcades in malls. But if you went to the seaside, the British seaside, as we call it.
Oh, the British seaside.
The British seaside. If you went to a
Broadchurch,
pier,
down to Broadchurch.
Down to Brighton or Whitstable. Like, if you went there, especially Brighton Pier, it was like, they're just huge arcades. And they would mostly be ones to win money and toys, but you would get a couple of stand-up cabinets. And it's that same thing. Hearing that noise and that like chink, 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 chink of the coins, it just makes you feel like a little kid. And they encapsulated it so well here.
The excitement that Ellie feels is just palpable. Again, you know, what a great job by Bella Ramsey. And the first thing she wants to do is play Mortal Kombat 2, because as we've seen from previous episodes, she has heard a lot about this game.
There's even a Mortal Kombat 2 banner in their bedroom that they share. Like, this is like Riley's hyperfixation.
Yeah. So they play. Raiden versus Melina. Riley wins round 1. Riley then wins round 2, and man, this hit because anybody who's ever played Mortal Kombat knows that when you win the bout, you get to hit the finisher. Your character, you can hit
if you can press the buttons fast enough, you can do a fatality.
You can execute your character's fatality / finishing move, and in this case, it's Melina's man-eater move where she eats the opponent
and then pukes out the bones.
But the thing that really resonated for me was like playing Mortal Kombat against other people and being like mad if they were going to hit the fatality. I'd be like, you better not fucking hit the fatality. Dude, don't do it. And so Ellie's like, don't do it. Don't do it.
And also like, because I love Mortal Kombat. That's like one of the video games and the series I play more than any other. I even love the movies. Like, I love Mortal Kombat. But I tell you, I'm terrible at a fatality. That horrible feeling if you miss it and your character just goes like, and then falls over. So like, I also love, again, if we talk about Riley and how much she cares about Ellie and the planning, I know she was in there playing that game, practicing those fatalities.
She basically admits it. Like,
Ellie's because like, that's how she knows where the money is. Because how does she get the quarters? She breaks open a change machine.
She knows all the moves. She's like up, up, down, and then you hit the like. Come on, you've been practicing.
I'm a button basher, so you better stop it.
Now, as they are playing, camera drifts off, and our friends are unaware of the fact that a few stores over, somewhere here close by in the mall, there is an infected, heavily, scaled with cordyceps mushrooms, who is just now stirring into consciousness. Ellie finally wins a bout.
I just want to say, if we're talking about Fireflies and their bad training.
Yeah, like sweep this mall. Sweep them all.
Sweep them all. How is that not like the first thing that they taught her? That makes me mad. You have a gun.
Secure
that
the
guy was
fucking mall, folks.
You could have just gone and shot that infected in the head, and this would not be a problem. Because it's I like as well. It touches on that thing, like you said. I love that moment where you said they're both wrong. That's the sad thing. They're both wrong. Ellie is wrong about FEDRA, and Riley is wrong about the Fireflies. And I love this because this is a great moment of that. Fireflies were not wrong. FEDRA has been lying. The mall is not overrun with infected. But FEDRA was not completely wrong. There are infected in the mall. So it's that great gray area of like, what is the truth? And in this moment, the most important thing is just that there's a single infected in the mall.
Yeah. And to your point, one, let's secure the mall if you're going to have a child.
You planned this so long.
Yeah. Let's secure them all, number one, and tell her how to secure them all, and don't have her do it on her own. Have teams, and then second
at least
of all,
one adult.
To your point, the Fireflies want to overthrow FEDRA, and they want to reestablish a government. You know that ostensibly they would run, and everything that we've seen from them tells us that they wouldn't be good at it. Like Marlene and the Fireflies have executed one fuck up after another throughout the course of this show. And here they are doing it again, tasking a child with like securing a large sensitive space while sitting on a cache of, I guess, like important munitions. Like that's
that they have
job.
A child making.
And they have a child doing it. It's ridiculous. Ellie finally wins. There's this moment where she and Riley get close to each other, but nothing happens. Ellie is then like, hey, I gotta go back soon. I don't want to get in trouble. Riley is disappointed, but then she decides to speed up her timetable of wonders to really get to all the things that they want to get to. Riley takes Ellie to a spot in the food court, and we see that she has been sleeping there. We also see the pipe bombs, as you said, and she gives Ellie the gift. It's the No Pun Intended Volume 2 book.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's going to be the curse of Joel's life for the next like 6 weeks.
So as they're trading puns, this is when Ellie discovers the pipe bombs that Riley's been building, and Ellie is upset. She realizes that that Riley didn't discover them all, that she's been posted here by the Fireflies to make bombs and to guard this like arsenal that she is creating. And then Riley again shows her naivete by saying, hey, don't worry about it. Like the Fireflies, number one, she's like, Ellie's like, so what happens if the Fireflies blow me up? Like I'm with FEDRA, right? And Riley is like, no, I wouldn't let that happen. I wouldn't let them do it. And it's almost tragic, the naivete that Riley has here. She's so, I mean, who hasn't at a young age especially been entranced by the feeling of belonging somewhere, like finding a community and there being like a real, it's like almost like falling in love. You realize, oh, I'm around people who are like me, and we have a, she really believes that, oh, everyone's like me, and they therefore love and value Ellie. And they understand that though she is in FEDRA, she's good, and they wouldn't hurt her. And it's so childlike and sad. It is. And understandable that she would think like this. In fact,
that notion
I
of
would
grooming
argue that,
and brainwashing.
That's exactly it. Because I would argue, to your point, the Fireflies are counting on people being this naive. Exactly. Or else why approach a 16-year-old to do this? Yep. You're counting on the fact that they don't know about the world.
And also not just that, you're counting on the fact that they're reckless. Because think about this. In a world where FEDRA hangs people for like going against them, for the smallest infractions, we even saw this in Boston. So we know it's the case where Riley grew up. Riley, a random woman in the street asked her what she thought about FEDRA, and Riley started chatting shit and bad-mouthing FEDRA. That in itself, that is like, you are not stealth. Like, this is a problem. But it shows that the anger and hatred towards FEDRA, I think probably very understandably being raised in a FEDRA orphanage, it bubbles to the top in Riley, and they can take advantage of that. And I think this is such a heartbreaking narrative reveal, because I think they do such a good job seeding how much Riley's planned it. And I do believe that Riley planned this date, but the date is secondary and just a offshoot of this mission that she has. And that's heartbreaking because to Ellie, it proves to Ellie that she's second. She ran away for 3 weeks. She didn't know where she was. She thought she was dead. And then she did this beautiful, huge, like romantic gesture, but it was really just an offshoot of this mission that she had that took her away from Ellie. That's so heartbreaking, because two things can be true. It's romantic, it's kind, she put thought into it, but it wasn't the purpose of her being in the mall. This wasn't something for the two of them.
It's not just Ellie she's in love with. She is in love with being a Firefly, truly. It's a great point. Ellie is now furious. And rightly so, honestly. And she notes, hey, none of this shit was even about me. You were already here. They ordered you to do this. Yada, yada. I'm out. Riley tells Ellie that, well, if you're leaving, this is it. Just so you know, like, I'm leaving too. Like, Marlene is giving me my posting. I'll be leaving Boston. Tonight's my last night here. Ellie asks, why did you bring me here then? And Riley's like, because I wanted to see you. I wanted to say goodbye. Ellie leaves. Then doubles back. Just the thought of leaving Riley under these circumstances, it brings her up short. And here's this show has been doing this all season, which is giving us these little fake outs where you think the thing so that you expect to happen. And it's always based around some point of the game that the game players would be expecting. And here is that moment. She comes back. You hear screams. She runs up, panicked. Riley, are you okay? But it isn't Riley. It's one of those Halloween decorations.
Yeah, it's like a spirit Halloween. Where and it's like, and it's like waking up and sitting back down in its little skeleton bed.
And they're in this Halloween store. She finds Riley just kind of sad, moping in this Halloween store. And Riley says, surprise, it's the fifth wonder. And it's the store. She thought Ellie would love it, so she saved it for last. Riley gives Ellie the book of puns. Ellie tells Riley that she doesn't think that she understands what the Fireflies are really about. And Riley again says, like, you think you know everything, but you don't know everything. But then she kind of admits that Ellie is right. She basically says, like, hey, you don't understand what it's like to feel like I'm part of a mission, part of a community. They chose me. I matter to them. And it's a way of saying, yes, maybe I don't know everything that the Fireflies are doing, but they want me, so I want
how they
back.
make me feel is more important. Also, I think there's a really interesting thing here where, Riley is not callous to her feelings about Ellie or Ellie's feelings. Riley asked Marlene if Ellie could go with her, and Marlene said no. She stays in FEDRA. She stays in that Boston orphanage. Now, like I say, I'm not going to get into spoiler territory, but in the game and in the tie-in comic and in the DLC, there is a reasoning behind why Marlene cares for Ellie and kind of makes these choices that is a human reason. I feel like in the game, I understand that they may likely show this later, but currently it feels like a conspiracy to me. I feel like Marlene wants Ellie in FEDRA for a reason, whether it's because she thinks maybe they have a bunch of kids who were born after the fall and they think that they could be immune and they want to see. Or maybe it's because she wants a plant within FEDRA. I don't know what it is, but I found this announcement, even knowing what the game reasoning is, I feel like it's so interesting. We've heard, Ellie has asked Marlene about her mum. Ellie asked Marlene, are you my mum? There was a chance there for a conversation that could lean into what happened in the game. But instead, this just makes Marlene seem like she has some kind of shadowy, overarching plan.
Definitely. And don't forget, Marlene basically intimating earlier in this, in episode 1 that she's been keeping an eye on Ellie for a long time.
She says, I put you in that orphanage. Like, it was me.
So
and
she's
there's
been
a
up
reason.
to something.
And I find that really interesting.
Ellie basically is unhappy with Riley's decision, but comes to a place where she accepts it. Riley tells Ellie that, okay, we have one last surprise left. She gives Ellie a werewolf mask. Riley puts on a scary clown mask, and they play on Ellie's Walkman a cover of I Got You Babe by Etta James. And they dance. And then at the end of the dance, the masks come off. Ellie desperately says to Riley that she doesn't want her to leave. Riley says okay, and then they kiss. And it's a wonderful, tender, nervy moment. Ellie then apologizes, but of course it's fine.
Yeah, Riley's like, what for? They both wanted this. It's like this is a world where maybe in this night it feels like they can make something great happen between the two of them.
And then before you know it, the infected is there. They hear it before they see it. And Riley has her gun out. She says, get ready to run. It feels like something Joel would say also, which
it really does.
The contrast is so stark, Then all of a sudden the infected is within sight. Riley's opening fire on it, hits it a couple times. The infected, of course, does not go down. It's like almost like to clicker level or something of like hardiness.
Yeah, and also like again, I feel like the 3 weeks was not spent well. They did not think like,
listen,
let's make sure she can do a headshot.
Well.
She needs to know, or shiv something. Like they need to know. She needs to know how to kill a zombie because she's protecting these, I'm sure, very expensive in the relative terms of the Last of Us economy, munitions that could kill many people. Maybe it would have been good to have one of those around in case there was an infected. Riley has clearly been told there is no infected. Riley is not ready for this. And it is like really heartbreaking to see this. Also, just want to shout out the fact that throughout this episode from the beginning, they're playing 80s music. So if we know what Bill's code is, we knew where this was going to go. And it's going exactly here.
So there is a struggle. Riley is knocked out for a little bit. Ellie is on her own. Then Riley comes back to, knocks the infected off of Ellie. Ellie finally kills it with a head stab.
So sick.
And they are both so high on adrenaline. Ellie is like particularly like flush with victory, and then she looks at Riley, and Riley's got this devastated look on her face, and they realize they've both been bitten, and so they're dead, essentially. We go back to the house. Joel is shivering on the floor. Ellie is still standing on the door. All of these thoughts have flashed through her mind in the seconds that she had been standing on the other side of that door, and it steels her for what comes next. She thinks, I'm not going to lose Joel the way I lost Riley. It's not going to happen. She runs upstairs, looks for any supplies she can find to try and stabilize Joel. We go back to the mall, and Ellie, in her rage at the hopelessness of their situation, is just smashing everything in sight. Riley is like, go ahead, there's more stuff to smash over there. She's really kind of resigned to this happening. I will say both of them are acting like there's no more zombies in this building. Like, like if you saw one, that would tell me there might be more, but that's for another time. Riley is really resigned to this being in the end. She says that, I guess we could kill ourselves, but I don't want to. I think what we should do is go into whatever comes next hand in hand. We squeeze every last good moment out of the moments that we have left. And it's just really, I read it as this very young, the passion and strength of young love is this feeling like even as infected, we'd know who each other are.
Yeah.
Like that. It's almost that kind of statement of like, yes, but we'll be together.
Exactly.
In whatever comes next.
I really love how in this final moment, Riley actually has like this immense amount of wisdom. Like we've kind of joked about this 3 weeks of wisdom that she got from the Fireflies. But in this moment, she has a recognition that like no one else really has had apart from Sam. So it's kind of that childlike wonder of, you know what? One, we could still have 4 or 5 hours together in this mall where we remember each other. So let's make the most of that. And two, who knows what happens?
Who knows what happens
when we turn?
Next?
You never know. We might just be both living in here, being infected together. And I love that is such an out of the box, different, hopeful outlook than what we usually get, which is this: you got to kill them. You got to kill someone. And it brings me back. I've been really happy to see a lot of people in the Discord reading The Girl with All the Gifts and starting to watch the movie. And I feel like this is really playing into those questions. Like we don't really know what the cognizance of a zombie is. We don't know how the infected experience life. And I love that Riley has this kind of, kind of that mind-blowing moment where she's just like, well, we could just enjoy each other and spend time together. I mean, I can't imagine how horrific that would have ended up being for Ellie, because we know who survived and who didn't. Yes.
So they grasp hands and lean on each other and go forward into whatever comes next. We go back to the house. Ellie has come back to Joel. She has a sewing needle, and she kind of grits her teeth, steels herself, and goes about the really, really hard work of binding up Joel's wounds. He passes out from the pain of it, and we fade to black, and we still don't know the fate of Joel.
Just before he passes out, there's this great moment where like she's pressuring the wound, right? Putting pressure on it. And Joel allows her to hold his hand.
Yeah.
And their fingers like intertwine. And it's this first moment of vulnerability, real vulnerability that Joel's shown Ellie. And also I think that marks a change. If Ellie asked Joel if she was family now, he would say yes. It wouldn't be your cargo. You know, she's willing to save him and he can feel that and he's willing to be saved in that moment. Whew, what an episode.
What an episode. And an episode that really underlines Ellie's growth from a person who has kind of been the sidekick in a lot of the important relationships in her life until now. And now she is really standing up on her own 2 feet and being the person who saves the other people. Really beautiful. And also, I got to say, is an episode that makes you see the Fireflies in a very, very different light.
Yeah. It's a really interesting world building episode. Like I said, like this has the potential emotional heft of like episode 3. And I'm sure that for a lot of people, it's going to hit that way. And it is, Storm Reed and Bella Ramsey is so brilliant together.
Yeah.
But the thing that really blew me away as a viewer and as a kind of somebody who's always enjoys looking at these narratives, it was that world building. It was this idea of like, who are the Fireflies really? What does Marlene know? What could happen that would explain away this behavior? And will it come too late? Does it matter? And also, like you said, arming children, putting them in charge of munitions. This is not some great hope for the future currently. This is like dangerous.
Yeah. Well, we'll be continuing our coverage of The Last of Us show here on the X-Ray Vision podcast. Up next, Nerd Out.
Spoiler. This Nerd Out contains spoilers for the video game The Last of Us Part 2, which would make me say probably just skip past this if you have not played the game or care about spoilers, because this will likely come into play, or there will be characters mentioned here who would come into play in a second season.
I would say also secondarily.
Yes.
If you are a show watcher who has never played the game.
Exactly.
I would also stay away from this.
I'm saying just generally don't do it, probably.
Don't listen to this unless you have played The Last of Us 1 and 2.
If you do not be Googling anything about these characters.
Also, don't do that.
Don't do that. In today's Nerd Out, where you tell us what you love or why, or a theory that you're excited to share, Rob pitches us a Last of Us Part 3 video game, which I think introduces something that the first Last of Us was arguably missing, though I understand why it was missing.
So here is Rob's pitch for a Last of Us 3 game and how it would end. Quote, "The third act would end with Ellie traveling with Abby back to the new Firefly HQ. I would love to be able to switch from Abby to Ellie on their journey, using each one's different skill sets to move the player along towards the goal and survive. I would also make Ellie's choice to sacrifice herself up to the player." So in other words, unlike The Last of Us 1 and 2. But I would love to have that be the choice, be the potential savior of mankind, or act like the father figure of her life, Joel, and tear down the Fireflies once again. So in other words, Rob's pitch is a Last of Us 3 ending with a choice. As Ellie, you can either A, sacrifice yourself, save the human race, or B, kill all the Fireflies.
That would actually be such a nice reflection of that first game. And it would give us that, how much has Ellie changed over these games and what choice would the player make? It would give us back that agency that we never had. And it would give Ellie the agency to make the choice that so many people wanted her to make. I think that is that could be a really deep and interesting way.
I think this is great. Here is a pitch, because I feel like this choice, it's already a video game. You've likely, by the time you get to Act 3, you've replayed certain levels several times because you didn't make it through, and now you're here. It seems to me almost too easy to make the save mankind choice, right? Now, I wonder if you can add some stakes to it, like if you save mankind, I don't know how you do it, but if you save mankind, you can't play your next playthrough, you have to start all over again.
Oh,
like,
I like
you
that.
Can't,
I like
you know
that.
what I mean?
like
like,
that.
you know how like when you finish a game
Player
and you're in the
stakes.
end game? Yeah. You can like jump back in and play certain levels. If you save mankind, it wipes.
Yeah, that's
you
what I was going to say. It wipes. You either you don't. You
keep all
can't
your
play because
achievements.
Ellie dies.
Yeah, you
know?
keep all your achievements, but the next time you play, you have to play from the beginning. Now, if you decide, as I would imagine, either Abby and Ellie together or just Abby or just Ellie, if you decide to wipe out the Fireflies, then you keep all your saves. You can play, you can jump back into different levels and keep all that stuff. You keep all your DLC regardless of what choice you make. But I'm thinking there has to be
I like that
a cost,
idea.
right?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll say is the writers of these games are like so brilliant at telling these stories that I also think that there is a version of this where they get you so invested in this story that there are people who will make the other choice. Also, as well, it's the Joker thing. There's people who just want to see the world burn. So I think there's that interesting thing of like knowing that you're making the wrong choice and the human appeal to make this horrific choice. And also the tradition of the game, which is to make the terrible choice. So I think that's really interesting.
What about this? If you choose to sacrifice yourself, there is no post. You know how usually you win the game and then there's like a post-game montage.
That's what I'm saying. Nothing.
You're just
nothing.
Dead. You
it's
just
black.
go to black.
Fade to black.
Yeah, you're
done.
dead.
Yeah, I think that's it. You don't get any cutscenes. You don't know what happens.
You don't know if it works.
You don't know if it works.
You don't know if humanity is saved.
You don't know if the rest of the world keeps going on. You have no idea because you're dead. I think that is like such a
We
bleak,
Soprano it.
Just, fade to black. You never know. And that's going to just have people talking for like a million years.
I do love the idea, Rob. I think it's really great. Here's the thing I wonder. Is Naughty Dog so invested in their style of storytelling, which is in these big moments, you don't have agency. We have agency. We're telling our story. If you want to know about our story, you can play through and that's it. But don't expect to be like, well, now Joel's not going to do this or Ellie's not going to do this. And Ellie's going to decide to, not get involved in this fight. Abby is going to decide to walk away and live peacefully. And so I wonder if Naughty Dog would ever switch it up. I do wonder if they would ever decide, if they do decide to go back for a Last of Us Part 3, which is, can't imagine they won't. If they ever do decide to hand over the keys in a key moment to a player.
Yeah.
I wonder.
It's so exciting to even think about. Thank you, Rob. If you have theories or passions you want to share, hit us up at xray@crooked.com. Instructions are in the show notes, as always.
Well, that's it for us. Rosie, anything to plug? Plugs.
You can read my coverage of the show, which is a weekly article that I write about a certain part of the show that speaks to me at IGN. You can read, I wrote a lot of articles for DC.com. DC Comics, now known as DC.com.
Ever heard of them?
Superman, Batman,
Wonder Woman, Flash, Wonder Woman.
I wrote
Martian Manhunter.
Teen Plastic
Titans.
Man. I actually got to write a Plastic Man article, which was very fun, about Kyle Baker's brilliant Plastic Man, like one of the weirdest, best comics ever made. I wrote a lot of articles there this month. You can check them out. I have a really cool one. Maybe, I don't know what days are. I think it will be out by the time this comes out, about a really underrated, underread Green Lantern arc by Christopher Priest and Mark Bright that was really cool, that ran as backups in Action Comics. So those are fun. Like lots of articles online. When this finishes, I will be sending the much toiled over next draft of this secret project that I have that hopefully I'll be able to share soon. So that's cool. And I'm here twice a week. Rosie Marks on Instagram and Letterboxd, and obviously here.
Catch our next episode Friday, March 3rd, where we'll be talking about the premiere episode of Mandalorian Season 3. Bring back the baby.
Bring back the baby. We want to see him. And
we want to see that beautiful, now 53-year-old baby. And of course, remember, we're bringing you 2 episodes twice a week, Wednesdays and Fridays, on your podcast platform of choice. Check us out.
And if you want to see us as well as hear us, you can subscribe on YouTube, where you can watch full episodes of the show now. Follow us on Twitter. We're at XRVPod. And check out our Discord. We talk about it a lot because we have a lot of fun in there. bunch of amazing fans, people who love all the same cool stuff as we do. And me and Jason pop in there every now and again. If you want to do watch parties, those are popping off at the moment. We're going to have them for The Last of Us, for Mandalorian. And speaking of the Discord, that's it. Join the Discord. It's really good.
5-star ratings, 5-star reviews. We need them. We got to have them. You got to give them to us. Here is one from Meligator. Family bonding. I love and learn from Jason and Rosie so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Meligator.
That means a lot.
They are very entertaining, and occasionally I can mention something to my 16-year-old, and shocker. Thanks for making me a sometimes cool mom. You're welcome.
Wow. That's the power of X-Ray Vision. And
it really is the power.
I love it.
See you next time,
Bye.
folks.